Hi, welcome back. Welcome to the Owl Nest. This channel hit 1,000 subs, so thank you for being here. And now it is time to talk about Switchback versus HiJinx. Oof, this one's gonna hurt. You see, what had happened was... Hi there. Do you have anxiety? Do you lay awake at night thinking about all of your mistakes? Do you stare at the ceiling at 2 a.m. thinking about that cringy thing you said at a party when you were a teenager? Sweetie, I hear you. Relatable. But trust me, nobody's gonna remember those awkward moments. Don't worry. Meanwhile, I get to spend the rest of my life thinking about that time a spinning weapon fell off my dangerous combat robot. Oh, and people will remember this one because it was on TV, and then the internet. It's been memed. I have been tagged in the memes. It's immortal. This will outlive me. So we might as well talk about it. You see, what had happened was, in 2019, when we set out to build the very first HiJinx, one huge recurrent design requirement that we all agreed upon was serviceability. The robot has to at least be kind of easy to work on, and this informed our armor panel shape decisions. The version 1 HiJinx and the current design have a massive block of machined aluminum as the base of the weapon stack. Chongus. Inside that is a steel sleeve, and then there are bushings. Because the loads all the way around the weapon shaft during a hit are just massive, up to 44 kilojoules of force, and we have to absorb that energy or rip ourselves apart. In 2019, the bushings inside were made by HiJinx, and on the bottom we had our classic weapon capture, the Giganut. And in the topmost armor panel, we had a bearing to constrain the side loads and help the shaft spin true. The 2019 HiJinx had a flat top panel on the head that bolted on the same way as our flat wing panels do. The next version of HiJinx was built on what we learned in Season 5. Mainly, the HiJinx bushings were replaced by oily bronze bushings, and the construction of the head changed pretty dramatically. The Season 5 head was welded onto the main chassis, and the final top plate bolted on, but in our fight with Bloodsport, that showed that the grade 8 bolts that hold the head plate down could break in shear without taking a direct hit, and that meant that the whole head had to be changed. We've had some discussion as well about whether the bearing was over-constrained, but that's a sidebar. For Season 6 and 7, the head is a unibody. Top, side plates, they're welded together in situ at the same time the upper central frame rails are welded onto the chassis. They absolutely must conform to each other for two reasons. One, any amount of interference means the head doesn't slide on very well, and two, any amount of slop is an area where a load, like energy from a hit, could slap the plates together or pull them apart. It's dangerous to leave things loose around the weapon. But the head still had the top bearing in it, and we found that with a pair of heads, identically fabricated on the same chassis with the same setup by yours truly, there was still a tiny amount of variation, and any variation at all in the location of the bearing mount could add some pressure to the top of the weapon shaft. How big of an issue is it? Well, we had 2 chassis for Season 6, 2 heads, and then spare plates, and when we queued up the second chassis after the Sawblaze fight, there was like a fraction of a millimeter difference in the bearing mount alignment from chassis 1 to chassis 2, meaning that the weapon shaft was pushed ever so slightly against the bushing, adding friction. Friction bad. We solved this in the short term by basically adding slop to the weapon stack, or combat clearance as we like to say, but it's not enough. Imagine a scenario where we take a direct hit to the head, which did happen recently, and then that bearing is no longer where it used to be. Unacceptable! So we had to redesign the entire weapon stack to exclude the top bearing while still containing all of the energy from the weapon. And here's what we came up with. Ooh, segue. The robot in the Ripperoni fight was actually our Season 6 chassis, and you can tell because the inside was pink. The Season 7 chassis has a blue interior. We do color code the chassis, because why not? You just eliminate one big chance for human error. The reason why we had the Season 6 chassis in that fight is because we had some tragic, and I do mean literally tragic, manufacturing issues that delayed the Season 7 build. So the first fight in which we used our Season 7 chassis was Switchback, and that means it was untested. Back to the subject. Right, here's what we came up with. So the head shape would remain essentially the same, but the upper bearing would be removed and a new containing plate added inside that would bolt to the top frame rail. Thus, it would be tied into the steel chassis. This reduced the overall height of the weapon shaft, and it required a redesign that deleted Orion's classic clamp collar, the part of the spinning weapon stack that would slip on a big hit and dampen the return energy into our robot. So there was an opportunity here to move from a 4140 weapon shaft, which is adequate, but out here by the ocean, they were literally rusting in the shop, adding friction, and friction bad, and move to a 17.4 pH stainless steel weapon shaft, which is more resistant to corrosion, higher chromium content for a slippery smooth bearing surface all the way down, and better strength. So I found a section of 17.4 pH stainless in Florida, which was rad because our main machining sponsor, P3D Creations, are also in Florida. So I drop shipped the material to them and sent drawings for the new weapon shaft that replaced the clamp collar with a Jesus nut. Do you like helicopters? I know I do. I had 2 days of helicopter training while working on my fixed-wing pilot license, and I decided that flying them maybe isn't for me. Maybe I have enough dangerous hobbies. I have 2 pages of notes where every paragraph ends with, and then you die. You enter a low G condition, unload weight from the mast, and then you die. Or, you fail to enter auto-rotation, and then you die. It just goes on like that. So, much respect to helicopter pilots. But the engineering of a helicopter is just marvelously mad. So a Jesus nut is the slang term for the main rotor retaining nut, or mast nut, which holds the main rotor mast of some helicopters. The related slang term Jesus pin, that refers to the pin used to secure the retaining nut. The slang implies that if this nut fails, your only hope is Jesus. If you saw my hardware fail video about the mammoth fight, you might already know that there are ways to mitigate having a nut back off of a spinning shaft that are superior to a traditional lock nut, such as a castle nut, a flex top nut, etc. Orion, myself, the team, we had weeks of design review in 2022 before we settled on a Jesus nut style top retaining nut. And the hardware selected was very hard, basically military grade flex top nut, 1" 20 thread, and the top of the weapon shaft was machined with that thread pitch. Now, if you're going to jump in the comments section and tell me this was a dumb idea, well, just remember that, for example, light helicopters have a maximum gross weight around 4,000 pounds, while larger helicopter may have a gross weight of up to 10,000 pounds. So there are real-world examples of this kind of hardware being used effectively under a high load. But, something went very wrong for us. Plus the time pressure. We had a 1-day turnaround from losing our chassis in the Ripperoni fight to queuing up the entirely new robot for the Switchback fight. Luckily, my team does hustle. We did not sit around feeling sorry for ourselves, we got to work. And after installing and wiring up the electronics, we slapped on a tail and went to install the weapon bar, and the flex top nut was too hard. It was too stiff. It did not, in fact, flex up top. We tried to tighten it down, and I'm obviously not the largest person on the team, so we got the folks over 6 foot tall to torque on this thing, and it just would not tighten down. It actually started eating into and destroying the threads on the 17.4 pH H900 weapon shaft. 17.4 pH H900 has a C40 Rockwell hardness, so this nut was just destroying it. Okay, do not panic. There is other hardware in the world. So we got on the internet, over to McMaster-Carr, found 3 possible solutions, and I was like, here's my credit card, buy all 3. Now, when we were filming in Los Angeles, McMaster could bring us shiny new hardware on the same day, via courier. And I did love that. In Las Vegas, they will not do that. And we had to fight that day. We could not delay. If we asked to delay, there was a chance we'd be forced to forfeit. HiJinx does not forfeit. So the entire team went on a mission through the pits asking every team who would talk to us, do you have any hardware in this size and thread pitch? And lo and behold, our Miku Blue savior, Charles Overhaul Guan, had in his pit a lock nut with the correct thread pitch and a blue nylon insert. Very on brand. Lock nut, not ideal, we've gone over that. But it fits, and we could torque it down. And hey, just don't reverse the weapon spin direction during the fight, but this could work. Even if the weapon was a little less punchy with this hardware, it's fine, let's just get in the test box. And we got to a place where both of the weapon motors were spinning, we were ready to fight. And then we get into the fight, and it's all a little blurry. We were spun up, Switchback was spun up, they spun down on us, and the weapon bar exited the robot. I think the weapon bar tried to exit the arena. Sorry about your glass. So, I wish they had kept the audio for the post-fight interview, because I would have been a special moment for all of us to enjoy together, but it's now lost to history. This is all you get. So we get the robot back to the battery cooldown area, and we're a little baffled, momentarily at least, because there is no damage. Like, there's scrapes and scuffs, but we have full hull integrity. So what just happened? And we find, wrapped around the threads on the weapon shaft, this little bit of blue nylon. That's all that's left of the nut. Your nut has left the chat. Sweetie, that nut left the zip code. It exploded. It vanished. And all I have to say is, Charles Guan, you have a weak nut. Hashtag Charles Guan has a weak nut. So it turns out this was a grade 2 nut. Charles, why did you even have grade 2 hardware in the pits? What was the thought process behind this purchase? Is it because it's blue? I have been carrying this around in my backpack since filming, and now it's going directly in the garbage. Goodbye, sir. Goodbye! Your services are no longer needed. I am joking, of course. Uncle Chuck gave us what he had on hand to help us get into the fight, and it's not his fault that our design requires a stronger nut. So, my face, when this all happened, that is a meme now, and, like, what do you do? Every single thing has gone wrong in what was supposed to be our breakout season with what was supposed to be an improved robot. Well, what we do is, we get our McMaster order, and we try all 3 nuts, and we select the one that has a brass set screw that deforms into the 17.4 pH threads, acting like a small metal lock. And then we get ready for the next fight. We did not make it to the tournament this year, and that does feel like a big step backward. It is suboptimal all the way around. But it is not the end. You will see us again in the Golden Bolt Sin City Slugfest tournament coming around. Check your local Discovery Channel listings. And meanwhile, back in the pits, Switchback already owed me a drink because I got them armor. True facts. Our sponsor, Van Beber Brothers Steel, is one of the few places you can get thick, hard steel custom bent, which is great for Navy ships and combat robots. Other applications as well. Plows. Also, I have to give a little shout out to Team Switchback because they shared their VESC communication discovery with us, which I really appreciate. And they were gracious after the fight in the pits. It's good to have friends around. And so, as always, a big thank you to BattleBots for putting on this wild competition. We are looking forward to both the Sin City Slugfest airing later this year and the next season of filming. We wasted no time in addressing There's a forklift. I'll wait for the forklift. So, a big thank you, as always, to BattleBots. We wasted no time addressing the things what went wrong, and we plan to return with a substantially improved HiJinx. All of the upgrades that we wanted for Season 7, plus new stuff that we learned about in Season 7. It's gonna be the best HiJinx ever. And thank you, of course, to our sponsors, Autodesk, Van Beber Brothers Steel, P3D Creations, Send Cut Send, Integrated Motion Systems Inc., Gens Ace Battery, Montana Cans, and our anonymous benefactor. I hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you so much for supporting us. I hope you'll join us next season. And thank you as well to all of the fans who have bought HiJinx merchandise or made bids on eBay. All of that money is going directly into the new robot to help us fund for next year. We do not yet have any cash sponsorship, so if you would like to help us change that, please let me know. Okay, I love you, bye! Just wait a moment.